How's it going? Hello, Miami. Yeah. I'm the local guy, so I gotta, shout out Miami a little bit. All right. We're in here. So I've been really looking forward to this chat since they told me that I drew the straw to talk to you. I'm originally from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. This is actually where you were born as well, so we got some things in common, some cheesesteak love, that sort of thing. And I started to go through Randal's bio, and it is ridiculously amazing. I read it over and over and over again. And I thought, how am I going to remember all these things to try to share with you guys? What questions you should be asking maybe, and kind of some of the background. I said, I know what I'll do. Same thing I do with my team, which is ask you to give your own bio in the most unhumble and embarrassing way possible. And since I've memorized your bio now, I'm gonna, if you go too humble, I'll have to, fill in a little bit. So tell these good folks here a little bit about, who you are, what you're about, and some of the things you've done in your life.
So good evening, everybody. Come on now, I'm from Miami. More love than that. Good evening, everybody. All right, we're almost done with the evening, so hang in there. My name is Randal Pinkett. Again, born in Philadelphia, raised in New Jersey. When I left New Jersey a few days ago, it was 5 degrees. Yeah, she's laughing. It's not funny. And I'm actually losing my voice just a bit because I guess my mic's not working. Well, they didn't turn on the box. I'm losing my voice just a bit because of the change in temperatures. Just got me in a bind. So what's the quick story on me? Humbly, nobody in my family ever owned a business. My father did have a background in technology, and when my brother and I asked for a video game, he got us a computer, and he said, if you want to play the game, you got to make the game. And we were like, really, dude? Is it that serious? Really? We were just mad. And that decision he made put me on a completely different life trajectory. Instead of being a consumer of technology, it really made me a producer. I was writing code in middle school. My brother and I used to do these, I guess we call them hackathons now, but we used to see who could design the best video game at the age of 13. Combine that with my experience in college. I attended Rutgers University in New Jersey. I have a friend who I went to school with named Wayne Abbott. Wayne started a business in college. And to make a long story short, which we may get into, Wayne inspired me to say, if he can do it, why can't I do it? And so kind of a natural passion for entrepreneurship and a gift for technology turned me into this technology entrepreneur. And I've been in the game now for about 20 years. That wasn't that funny, but it was humble. I give credit to Wayne, I give credit to my dad, I give credit to the role models in my life for painting a picture that I couldn't paint myself.
And now I'm going to fill in some blanks.
Fill in some blanks.
So you went to a few schools along the way, got a few degrees here and there, right?
I did.
What were those?
So my undergraduate degree is electrical.
Yeah. I'm the local guy, so I got to shout out Miami a little bit. All right. We're in here. So I've been really looking forward to this chat since they told me that I drew the straw to talk to you. I'm originally from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. This is actually where you were born as well, so we got some things in common, some cheesesteak love, that sort of thing. And I started to go through Randal's bio, and it is ridiculously amazing. I read it over and over and over again. And I thought, how am I going to remember all these things to try to share with you guys? What questions you should be asking maybe, and kind of some of the background. I said, I know what I'll do. Same thing I do with my team, which is ask you to give your own bio in the most unhumble and embarrassing way possible. And since I've memorized your bio now, I'm gonna, if you go too humble, I'll have to, fill in a little bit. So tell these good folks here a little bit about, who you are, what you're about, and some of the things you've done in your life.
So good evening, everybody. Come on now, I'm from Miami. More love than that. Good evening, everybody. All right, we're almost done with the evening, so hang in there. My name is Randal Pinkett. Again, born in Philadelphia, raised in New Jersey. When I left New Jersey a few days ago, it was 5 degrees. Yeah, she's laughing. It's not funny. And I'm actually losing my voice just a bit because I guess my mic's not working. Well, they didn't turn on the box. I'm losing my voice just a bit because of the change in temperatures. It's got me in a bind. So what's the quick story on me? Humbly, nobody in my family ever owned a business. My father did have a background in technology, and when my brother and I asked for a video game, he got us a computer, and he said, if you want to play the game, you got to make the game. And we were like, really, dude? Is it that serious? Really? We were just mad. And that decision he made put me on a completely different life trajectory. Instead of being a consumer of technology, it really made me a producer. I was writing code in middle school. My brother and I used to do these, I guess we call them hackathons now, but we would just see who could design the best video game at the age of 13. Combine that with my experience in college. I attended Rutgers University in New Jersey. I have a friend who I went to school with named Wayne Abbott. Wayne started a business in college. And to make a long story short, which we may get into, Wayne inspired me to say, if he can do it, why can't I do it? And so kind of a natural passion for entrepreneurship and a gift for technology turned me into this technology entrepreneur. And I've been in the game now for about 20 years. That wasn't that funny, but it was humble. I give credit to Wayne, I give credit to my dad, I give credit to the role models in my life for painting a picture that I couldn't paint myself.
And and now I'm going to fill in some blanks.
Fill in some blanks.
So you went to a few schools along the way, got a few degrees here and there, right?
I did.
What were those?
So my undergraduate degree is in electrical engineering, Rutgers. I have a master's in computer science from Oxford in England.
I was going to say Oxford, that like somewhere, Ohio?
Where it's cold and wet, and I drank lots of tea. From Oxford, I came back to the U.S. I worked for AT&T for a quick second. Back then, it was part of another company called Lucent Technologies. I see a couple of head shaking. Remember Lucent? And then I went back to grad school. I got my master's in business, my MBA. I got my master's in engineering, electrical, and computer, and then my PhD, all from MIT, up in Cambridge, Massachusetts. So yes, that's 5 degrees. More degrees than a thermometer. And shouts to the man with the shout back. Thank you, brother.
Very nice, very nice. And there's probably a few more embarrassing facts you left out, but I'll let you go. But I will say, as someone who a little bit, has done a good job in tech, but also my scholastic experience was not as strong. So I dropped out of Penn State after the second quarter, and I was like, oh, that's just not for me. I had heard about this thing called a Rhodes Scholarship, which is extremely kind of hard to get, right? How many African American men have received that at the school that you went to?
So a show of hands, who's heard of the Rhodes Scholarship? By show of hands. Okay. How many people in here know a Rhodes Scholar? Okay, well now you know me. Everybody can raise your hand. So thank you. You're working with me. Thank you. You're working with me. Rhodes Scholarship, one of the oldest scholarships that sends you to Oxford, all expenses paid. I was the first and the only African American to win the Rhodes Scholarship at Rutgers. So in that regard, I made history when I won the Rhodes at Rutgers. I was really proud of that.
And we're glad to have you here. All right, I'm gonna stop embarrassing you now.
All right, so I'm gonna add one more thing. You might not add it or not. And for those that don't know, I went on a reality television show, and the guy that, watch yourself, the guy who hosts the show is making a lot of headlines right now for reasons that I am not happy about. And so I might have worked for him, but I don't like him. That's another conversation. We're not going to get political. But I was the season 4 winner. Okay, you can clap for that. Yep. You with me on that. I saw you set it off. So I was the winner of the 4th season of the reality show, The Apprentice, and the only person of color to ever win on the show. Only person of color. Of any color.
Love it, love it. I wasn't gonna let you get past that one. I was gonna swing back.
I didn't get humble on that one.
Nor should you. Nor should you. And so, kind of coming forward a little bit, there's some topics that you've written about that I think are particularly germane for this group. About starting businesses, funding businesses. A lot of folks here, as you may know, Miami is a fast-growing ecosystem, and we've heard this time and time again today, right, in our talks. And we are as entrepreneurial as any city in the U.S. or in the world. It's for a number of reasons, cultural reasons. But sometimes we have a hard time raising capital, scaling, and kind of taking that next step. So for the folks here, I think we heard a lot of things about starting the business and getting started. Tell us a little more about that next step, which is, okay, I've got this idea, it's going decently well, but now how do I raise some of that early stage capital and grow it? Right, so I think there's been some really great speakers and panelists that have offered some really great advice. The first thing I would say is don't confuse the early stage with the seed stage. That the early stage, at the end of the day, is really about friends and family. And I beat my head against the wall. I made a lot of mistakes trying to get into business. Again, first generation, I knew nothing and I had no one to go to. Thinking that seed stage, because they say seed stage, like it's seed, you plant a seed, it's supposed to grow from there. They're like, no, seed stage is like the second stage. I'm like, what do you mean the seed stage is the second stage? They're like, you need friends and family. I'm like, I don't have any friends and family. And if my grandfather gave me money, my grandfather would have been in the office every day, sitting next to me, looking me in my eyes, saying, what are you doing with my money? That's right. And when am I going to get it back? That's right. Right? So first thing is don't confuse the two. Mm-hmm. That what we do as entrepreneurs is figure out how to make something out of nothing. Right? How to make $1 out of 15 cents, stay legit, and still pay your rent. That's Tupac, if you didn't know. That's what we do. And so once you get through that hurdle, and now you get to the seed stage, now we're talking likely angels, who will kick in, a 5-figure, 6-figure sum, maybe 7-figure, but likely somewhere, south of that. Mm-hmm. And now you get to what some might call kind of the mezzanine or the stage thereafter. We're looking at maybe private equity, maybe venture capital. So it's important to know where you find yourself in the evolution of your venture. And at the end of the day, recognizing that each success at each stage predicates success on the next. That no one's going to invest in you at the seed stage without having some track record. That you're able to demonstrate something that they're able to invest in order to help it grow. And you've got to think through, in terms of how you want to divide up your equity and how you want to think about the different series, how you want to, chart the trajectory of the growth of your company. But it's important to just break down where are you. And then that helps to guide who you go after to get the kind of money you need. Awesome, awesome. And I'd like to kind of walk through some of this. Like this is, maybe a multi-year process, but here on the stage for some folks. So now you've got this, you've got your friends and family, and of our demographic, it's tougher to do friend and family rounds and I had friends that started a business and they went to their father or their aunt or whatever, and they gave them $100,000. And in our families, that's probably not as common, right? I'm lucky to get $20 from some of my uncles, right? Or a stick of gum. Yeah, exactly. I might owe him $20 already. Right, and just to pause on that, how many of you saw The Social Network, the movie? Okay, he's just happy tonight, huh? Everything I say, he claps. I've got to get your card. There's lots of lessons from The Social Network, but one of them was Eduardo Saverin, who was Zuckerberg's roommate. When Zuckerberg needed money for servers to scale up Facebook, if he didn't have Saverin, who had the money, he'd have gotten nowhere. And so you're right, this idea that having access to someone or some people that can invest in you based on the fact that they know you and believe in you, that is not to be diminished. That it's harder for us. And I only say that not because there aren't people in the audience that are like me or saying, I don't have that, Randal, I got you. But rather to say, when you do get there, when you're able to be in a place where you have that successful company, you be the one
to provide that opportunity to somebody who didn't have the opportunity. Now, my last case in point, I'm taking over my main.
No,
my last case in point. So we didn't have the benefit of that when we got started, but we got 2 young men at my company who started the venture on the side, working the evenings and the weekends. They came to us, my partner, I got 3 partners, said, we're looking for 50 grand to just get us through this first stage. And I could not have been prouder than to write that check for them and say, you know what, guys, take the money and just make this happen, make it happen. And that's what we all have to do when we get to that position, is to give back to those who don't have the opportunity that we have.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Back to you. It's all you.
No, I love it. I love it. This is all about you, brother. All about you.
Nah, it's about you.
So we can't do it. But the next question I was going to ask is: so you get to this next stage, and it's hard, right? It's a lot of hours you're putting in. It's a lot of hard work. Again, going back to your background, you've got a lovely wife, children. You're very active in your church, right? How do you balance, work life in that kind of environment? And what did you do to make it work?
Yeah, well, I've been lucky in that I didn't get married till my late 30s. Mm-hmm. And so I had a lot of runway where, for me, I used the campus environment as my incubator for my business venture. So as you can logically conclude, I was in school for quite a while. And I wasn't desiring to be a lifelong student. I wasn't looking to stay in academia. But for my path, and everyone's path is different. You didn't finish. I got finished on steroids, right? The campus environment ended up being like the perfect storm for testing out ideas, building a team, having advisors by way of professors, and not having the obligations of a full-time job to distract me. Mm-hmm. So I could use evenings, weekends, semester breaks, even my classes as, platforms for the ventures that I wanted to pursue. And so now that I'm still in the entrepreneurial space and married and have 3 kids and et cetera, for me, it's about setting priorities, and that's easier said than done. I mean, if you got advice for me, please give me advice. Because on one hand, there are days where, my professional aspirations, are mitigated because I've got to be a father to my children. I got to be a husband to my wife. Mm-hmm. And then there are days where, my kids are like, Daddy's watching the show via FaceTime, or Mommy will record it, and I'll watch it when I get home. And so it's just about striking the right balance. But again, for me, my first priority is to be a good husband, be a good wife, be a child of God, and I believe the rest will follow.
Always does. That's good. That's that worthy. And I just wanted to circle back a little bit to something you had said earlier. I wanted to make a point. Eduardo Saverin, that we can do anything in this environment. Amen.
And just note, my oldest son just started his first semester at Johnson & Wales over in North Miami. So I got roots here too. I got family here.
All right, try to sell him a condo in the back. He didn't buy it yet, but I'm gonna keep trying. So now we're getting a little further down the road, and have you ever been in a situation where maybe the money ran out, or you had to kind of raise that next bit of capital, and then how did you handle those financial challenges, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I'm in the midst of a challenge right now. We just had a conference call this morning about a cash flow issue with the company.
It never stops, right?
It never stops. It never stops. Mm-hmm. And my experience is that, especially when you're growing, the way that the financial institutions and the capital markets work, they're only going to give you access to capital based on where you've been, not where you're going, yep. Right? And so yep. It's constantly a challenge if you're growing to get access to the capital you need to get to the next stage, because they're only going to give you capital based on either where you are or the 3-year running history of where you've been. And so the way we try to get around some of those gaps are, first of all, we are very, 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 I don't know if it's greedy or if it's stingy. You can tell me which one when it comes to our cash. Mm-hmm. So thoughtful, there we go. And what do I mean by that is that when given the opportunity to distribute cash out to the partners or to keep it in the business, we are very conservative in terms of keeping it in the business. And some we'll debate whether that's a wise strategy or not, but having our own access to cash to augment what we now have access to capital, be it a line of credit, be it a bank loan, or be it if we go back to do an equity raise, having that cash on hand, it just gives us so much flexibility to not have to ask, to not have to raise, and to not have to delay making decisions that we can then just fund ourselves. And so now the flip side of that is I've got 3 partners. I mean, that means that we have to defer and delay our payout. And so our compensation's below what we could make. We give out bonuses to staff. We don't get bonuses. I mean, there's a sacrifice there, but we believe we're investing in the short term to grow in the long term. We've done that since we were small.
When you look at Apple, as successful a company there's ever been in history, that is actually one of the founding principles, at least when Steve got back, is didn't want to go to capital markets, didn't want to ask or beg to do things. He wanted to just keep as much cash in the bank so he could do literally whatever's in the right for the company. So I agree. We're actually going to do a little extra Q&A than the last couple sessions because we both believe that all the value really comes from you guys, not just us talking at you. So I'd love to see some questions. We're going to have hopefully a chance for a few extra questions this round than the past.
Hey, my name's Nick. I'm actually from Philadelphia, DC, but I went to school at Temple University.
Do you?
Just graduated 2014, so I was going to ask, what is the? Oh, thank you. And I'm looking to move to Miami. So what have you found is the startup ecosystem here?
I mean, I'm learning a lot about Miami, having my son here, and just being exposed to the ecosystem. I feel like Miami has all of the right ingredients. Again, you've got a track record in terms of entrepreneurs who've come from here. You've got what I consider to be like the necessary confluence of higher education, a technological base that can be drawn upon, and then the energy of folks like you in this room. I mean, because entrepreneurship is both an ecosystem and it's also a culture. I like what someone said before about skill set and mindset. It's a way of thinking. And that's why it comes as no surprise that the number one predictor of whether you'll own a business is if your parents owned a business. Because you see it, and you see that somebody live it, and that mindset is instilled in you almost naturally. So I feel like the ecosystem here is well positioned, and it's incumbent upon BlackTech Week, and I want to applaud the organizers for having the vision to pull this off, because the reason why this is so important is because if Miami is poised to be the next Silicon Alley, Silicon Valley, it means that we're not going to get left behind as that trajectory unfolds. And that's why I love what they're doing here, and I couldn't be prouder to be a part of it.
I'll just give you a quick statistic. California has 3 companies for every 1 angel investor. Florida has 3 angel investors for every 1 company. So it's a great place to raise capital in the early stages.
Good evening, Brian and Mr. Pinkett. Brian, I met you a few years ago, and you told me about a startup idea I had. So I'm at the point where I do want to raise money at the early stage. Do you think it's better to take on debt from, like say your family or your friends, or give them equity partnership?
Wait, no, first, no, it was going to be the same answer.
No, I'll follow you, Brian.
Debt at an early stage can actually cripple a company. Now, if you're talking about like a convertible note or convertible debt, that kind of thing that's not paid out, an instrument like that is totally fine, and we can chat afterwards. If you want, I can get very specific. I can even give you a sample of one. But actual debt where you have to pay someone back out is a bad thing. A little quick anecdote, and I really want to hear from this gentleman. We bought a company last year that is now about 40% of our revenue. And that company had failed because they took out a bunch of convertible notes that paid out, and their investors literally bled them to death. And then I bought them off the scrap heap, and now have made a lot of money on that property. So definitely don't do anything that pays out.
I don't have much to add to what he said. And I'll just say what he said in my own words. The biggest challenge, one of the bigger challenges to startups is just the burn rate. How quickly you can burn through money, be it for development, be it for staff, be it for marketing, take your pick. Taking on debt adds to your burn rate. Because once the debt obligation kicks in, now you've got to start kicking out more money to meet the debt obligation, and that just, to use his word, that just cripples you. You want the freedom, the latitude to make every dollar work for you, and not, because a dollar borrowed is $1.20 paid, or $1.25 paid, or $1.50 paid, depending on, how it's compounded. So you got to make every dollar work for you, and debt is actually undermining the ability to make your dollars work for you. Now, not to say that if push comes to shove and you got to do what you got to do, that's not an option. We're just giving you what's the preference. But don't let, again, this is about making something out of nothing. We took debt early on, not advised, but we made it work. You might be able to make it work. So don't rule it out, just don't rule it first.
Yep. Other questions?
Questions?
Right up front here.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, how did your education affect in terms of just like you investing? Because I see you had, when you guys were talking, you have a degree in electrical engineering and a master's as well. And how does specifically like engineering, I wanted to ask, how does that help you in investing? And can you like see through people's like BS a lot of the times, like when they come to you and you can just kind of be like, no, that's not true? Or how's that ever played out?
Right, so let me say this. I believe experience is the best teacher. And there's lots of pathways to get experience. You can get it through lived experience, through work experience, through educational experience, and that it all builds upon your repertoire. It was a great point made earlier today about that good investors give you more than just money. They give you expertise. I call it smart money. And so, does my technology background give me experience in order to better evaluate certain kinds of technologies? The answer is absolutely yes. But also, having launched companies and seen them fail, I would argue it gives me even better experience to evaluate an idea as to whether or not it's good or not. Because what investors do, and I only dip and dab in investing, I'm more on the entrepreneurial side, but what investors can do well is that they can see 10 or 12 other companies just like the one you're thinking about, and as was said earlier, and tell you, you know what, you don't want to try this. You want to try that because I've already seen 12 other folks fail at doing it this way. And that's golden. And again, you don't get that from a textbook. You don't get it from a degree. You get that from being out there and doing the work. You get it from doing the work.
Agreed.
Hello, gentlemen. Tadre of Brackeen App. I just want to ask you, having at some point been a first-time entrepreneur and having to go through the challenge of raising funds, one of the things that you hear most often is that the easiest way to get an investor to listen to you is to reach out to someone that they've already done business with in order to kind of open that doorway. Well, one of the things that I've heard most often from entrepreneurs of color in particular is that they don't have connections to those people that can help open those doors. So what advice would you give someone who is, preparing to make that step in their business and doesn't quite know who to reach out to in order to get in the door so that they can have that initial investor meeting, if that makes sense?
I think it's a great question and a very insightful question. Part of our challenge, and again, this is Black Tech Week, part of our challenge is relationships. And people tend to associate with people who are like them. You look at my social network, most of my close friends are Black. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with being around people who are like you. The problem is you don't have to have the most diverse network, but you got to have diversity in your network. And one of the mistakes I made early on was not diversifying my relationships, whereas now I am very deliberate, very adamant that I need to have white contacts, Asian contacts, Latino contacts, Native American contacts, and not just from the kind of utilitarian perspective of what can you do for me, right? But rather, A, it makes me a better person. Put that aside and just buy it, buy it off the shelf. But second, to your point, if I want to get utilitarian, is that it now gives me entree to networks that I wouldn't have access to otherwise. There's a whole theory in social networks that says your most valuable contacts are what's called your weak ties. Has anyone heard that theory? The strength of weak ties? Okay, I see a couple hands. The strength of weak ties says that if I know you, I probably know the same people you know, if we're close. I probably know your cousin, know your brother, know your Ray, Junebug, I know them all. But if I have a contact that's weak, who I talk to once or twice a year, who's not like me, a white female in San Francisco, my most valuable information and context can come through her because she does not know the people that I know. And so my advice is, particularly for those of you that are early in your careers, is to A, be mindful of the diversity of your network. And then no matter what stage you are, challenge yourself to step outside of your comfort zone, to go to events you wouldn't normally go to meet people you wouldn't normally meet, to connect with people you wouldn't normally connect with, because it's those connections that are going to lead you to meet and interact and befriend people who you otherwise wouldn't know, and those are the contacts that get you in the door of what you just described a moment ago.
I'll just piggyback on that and say, yeah, your LinkedIn should look like the United Nations, because there's some research done by Harvard University that shows there are little subtleties in the way humans interact with each other that are cultural, that give different cultural groups comfort. Point in case, the piece was talking about how African Americans, we tend to get right into a conversation, no BS, just right to the point. And sometimes other groups, European Americans, they always start a conversation with the weather, a light joke, and kind of ease into that conversation. And some of those slight little social cues make the other person comfortable. And if you're going to be asking investors for money, it's important to get them as comfortable as possible, as quickly as possible. And little things like that can be solved just by knowing people of different groups.
Hey fellas, Clayton Guts from Miami Times. So I heard from Damon John that there's no new ideas, just no new execution. So with all the companies that come to you guys for possible funding or possible partnership, what can companies do to be built to last?
Built to last.
I don't know if that's possible.
That idea is losing its relevance or even its practicality. As companies merge and get acquired and start up and shut down, et cetera. But let's try to get at the question, which is perhaps how do you differentiate and how do you build a sustainable organization? You want to clarify?
To be more specific, with most of these companies potentially doing the same thing, how can it be built to last?
I'm gonna tell you, it really is the team. It really is the team. People say that you don't bet on ideas, you bet on people. And I'll even add this, and it's funny you said built to last, because Jim Collins wrote the book Built to Last, and then he followed that with the book Good to Great. Anybody read Good to Great in here? Show of hands, Good to Great? Okay, if you haven't read Good to Great, read Good to Great. And if you haven't read Good to Great, read my book. Wait, which I'm selling after this. Campus CEO and Black Faces in White Places. I think we got copies of those in the lobby, but that's neither here nor there. Good to Great. One of the things Collins talks about is how good leaders think what and then who. What should the company be doing and who should be on the team to help us get there? But the great leaders who've built companies to last think the complete opposite. They think who first and then what. Who should be on the team, who should be on the bus, and this is some counterintuitive stuff I'm giving you right here. Right, so only when you figure out who are the best and brightest I can get on my team, then do you get them in the room and figure out, well, what can we collectively do? Now, conventional thinking says come up with a great idea and then build a team around it. Collins says no, build a great team. Because he calls the former the genius with 1,000 helpers. The latter he calls the teams that are built to last, because the idea is shaped by the very people who are qualified to execute on the idea. And so you automatically fill gaps, you automatically have complementarity because the team is the ones who birthed the idea to begin with. And that's actually been the case for me. I've got 3 partners, we've launched 5 ventures together, the same who and 5 different whats.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, we can give Brian and Randall a round of applause. Again, thank you guys.